Hey, muy buenas tardes, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, do please let me start by thanking everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, and the love and support you guys extend and share with me. From the heart, thank you. Also, do please help support the message, the channel, in any way that it might suit you. I would highly appreciate it. Thank you. Well, to get into the story on hand today, real fast, and I want to continue on my story. This was a rare thing. And like I said, I was in 7 different prisons in Mexico since I got out, and I never seen it, right? Even when I was in the feds down in Mexico. But to continue off, we're still in Carranza. We were stuck there. Well, mainly because the procurador, he was dirty and was working with the Beltranes, and basically he wasn't allowing us to pay our way out, you know. But nevertheless, after the last little incident, there was a bunch of roses, like disagreements that we had with the Beltranes. For example, they weren't allowing us to do anything, right? And it was mostly to camaradas, just to be sincere, because we tend to go back to the wood shop from Casper, from Pasa, and eat and just maintain to ourselves. But when it came to the three Pilis, they were getting high, right? So basically, it is what it is, right? Them cats, you know what they thought, right? And since they knew they basically ran the Ramfla, they tried to push that agenda on us, right, as a whole. But you see, basically, what kicked it off was with Chevy. Chevy was, you could say, jefe de sicarios on the streets, but he was busted. So he was jefe de Talibanes inside, right? And the homie Wicked from Fontana, he had gotten there, right? He had gotten arrested for just going against Judas, right? Again, we weren't welcome in Nayarit, so the Judas were nailing dirt with these individuals, right? So they seen homies even just driving. Believe me, you would end up in Becarranza, right? To go through the little treatment they give us, to see where we're at. Nevertheless, the homie, he got found with some material, right? So they put him in there. But the homie Wicked, he was a good artist, he could tat. And me and him basically, we got together and he told me like, hey fool, let's uh let's see if we can bring some agujas and a machine and some tinta, right? To get a little shop going. Since they allowed us with the wood shop, right? Again, it was when Wilbur and Pablo were around, right? But anyways, so we opened it up, right? We ended up paying for a little spot. I mean, little spot, right? Right there next to the gym in the back. But basically, Chivis, what happened was we had a little mishap with Puerca, right? Puerca was another one that was under Blas, Leiva, and me and the homie were speaking English, and basically told us like real like told us we couldn't speak English, right? Or else that he was gonna, you know. And I'm always a hothead, right? and I just look for them words to actually take off, right? And especially down here, right? So when this fool said that he was gonna, well, you guys know them words. I got in his face and I told him, you ain't gonna do nothing, cause you know, you're a little coward fat man. And the minute them words came out of my mouth, the homie grabbed me and I knew I had messed up. They were already. So, anyways, I'm not gonna make it long. I got a little guajoloteras. I'll just leave it like that, for a little bit. Chivis took me in the first selling right there in those tres, and they went to town, right? Basically, cause I disrespected dude. But nevertheless, it was what it was, right? And well, at that time, I had made up my mind. If anything went down, I was gonna take Puerca's head off, right? And even though he had a lot of juice on the streets, whatever, I was just that individual, right? He wasn't gonna tell me how to run my program, period. I just had that little chip on my shoulder. Nevertheless, they started wanting to clip the homie wicked, right? Everyone, really. Every one of the homies, whatever they were doing, is we were gonna pay rent to them. So, I told the homie wicked, hey, chales, just leave it alone. I'd rather lose the money that we paid for the shop than pay this cat's rent, period, right? And anyways, I'm not gonna make it long in that. We started having a lot of head bumps, right, with them, and it will lead later on. But anyways, the core of the story is, like I mentioned before, when you come up from reception, basically you go in the Pinta, right? There's a portón. You go in this little place. It's like three little sections, and they basically strip you down, and you go through the little rutina, and then you go up to where there's barandilla. It's where basically people speak to the lawyers, or you pay for a bad family to come in, but you don't want to go into poblacion. So they take you through there. You go down to the dungeon, and that's where they have a hole right to the left. To the right, they have three big cells as a whole, and those are for maicerones, for people that are balling. They're doing things out there. Then you go upstairs, and like I said before, you go out to what's poblacion. There's no juras, never is no juras. You go out there, the guys that meet you are the verdes. They assign you, and then you go with the rojo, and they basically take you where you're headed, right? Anyways, one day, shortly after that incident, right, we're taking a lap, and basically a homie, right, that was from El Centro, but he was out in Mexicali, where, well, he came down on a mission, right? I will touch on him in the next story, but anyways, he told us, hey, you seen? He was out there from California. So we actually went out there to they call it's like kind of like a botanero, right? A botanero is a spot where they have music, beer, hyenas, whatever, right? That's exactly what it is. They had one of them music players and big ones, Rocola, and then you could buy white lining from the Pinta, or you can order whatever from the streets, right? Literally, it was next to the hotel. So we went up in there, just being nosy, really. And there was a blood, literally a brother, right? And so, I personally went up and I introduced myself to him, right? Told him, hey, I heard you're from California, this and that, and you guys know how. And yeah, right. His name was Odie. He was from Vallejo, though. And he was a cool individual. but he was literally doing a lot of things on the streets, right there in Nayarit. But he was more towards well, I don't know if you guys know, but he was more towards Islan del Rio, uh, in the borderline, right? Jala, all them in that little area, right towards that edge, and he was moving weight. And again, it's rare. It's especially the type of Jews that the brother had, right? Because he had Talibanis taking care of him. He actually, one time he told us, like, hey, I want you guys to trip on something, right? So me and the Pili, Richie, we went down there. And man, these sales, they weren't sales. I'll just leave it at that, right? And anyways, things happen. You guys know how things always happen, right? The dude had a lot of dope and he wanted to show love to us. Again, he was on the streets moving weight, moving people, right? And basically was Richie and they asked for something fronted, a little bit of black. There was no black in the prison. They sold everything. They had tienditas all over that prison, but there was no black, right? But a homeboy again, he had that card, right? Because he was under them like that tough. He was making them feria when it came to Cali, right? In whatever sense he was doing it, but he basically got a whole pedazo for these cats. He brought it in, fronted it to them, and you guys know what happened. Like I always say, it's over dope and feria, right, for these individuals. They weren't able to meet what they were supposed to, right? As a man of word. It's Mexico after all, right? And but then again, I'm a Sureño. I have no room to judge them, right? It's what we do. We just act. Again, the dude was cool. He had a lot of juice on the streets. You guys know how I respect other races, other factions. I don't really touch on them, so I won't touch on what he was doing. I'll just say he had a lot of juice with these individuals, right? And even though he was a brother, he was showing us love because we're from Cali, period, right? All the rest didn't really matter. And he was cool. He was real cool in the sense that we sat, we talked, we walked, he offered. We never took anything. Just the peelies, they didn't want to pay. And homeboy basically had Pelon, Diego, Chivis, and Blast most of all, right? Cook, come collect. They took down Richie, and a couple other camaradas down to Talacha, they call it. And they stomped them in and gave him a time for them to pay. And there's these bathrooms down there that they're the old bathrooms, right? The adobe, like that mud clay. And out of punishment, they had him scratch him with their nails. This is how they lower themselves in Mexico, right? We're talking about members, but dope overall, right? Basically, when they were out, they let them make their calls, do their things to get that feria come in, right? And with due reason, right? Odie's, he knew they were the big homies, right? He wasn't new to the system in California again. So he did a complete 180, right? Where he didn't want to mess, didn't want to speak, nada. It was like he blended in with them the way, in reality, if you think about it, he was working for them, right? He should have been, we were nothing, right? And then these vatos came, and I don't know if it was their intention from the beginning, but regardless, they were strung out. By this time, we were there like 6 months already. And about after the second month, they went on a good one. I'll just say that, right? It wasn't the first time they take him down there, and well, you guys get it. Nevertheless, Richard, most of all, he got out and he wanted us to make a distraction, and he wanted a homie to go hit the blood, right? Again, there's no reason, but we can't question it. That's part of the program, right? We know it's wrong, as we know in all of these calls. You know, well, I'm not gonna touch on that, but I was watching something and I just can't believe it's out there like that, right? In Cali. I understand Mexico is like, they feel more safer because they ain't gonna reach, but now they're doing it literally in Cali. But I will touch on that next. Anyways, me and a homie from Compton, we basically we said what would be the distraction, right? Remember, I had a gusanito with puerca, right? And my mind is, I like I mentioned to you guys back then, it was like anything. I was thinking of 1,000 ways how to hurt you and get away with it, right? And basically, we knew Puerca did some things, right? And at that time, it's like, you know, when you're in the world, everything, you're so good at literally lining up stuff, seeing what's there, seeing the angles where you could get away. It's just dumb mentality that we have. We knew that him and Blas had gotten some argument over the sister, right, de los Beltranes, and they really got into it, right? So it's an opportunity. At least it's where my head went, right? So I told him I would do, and I wasn't gonna blast him because that would be a death sentence, right? But nevertheless, we did this whole chorro, right? Made it look like it was like a man thing, right? It happened in the spur of the moment. We and me and the homie from Compton, right? We took off on him. I mean, we got paid, right? I'm not gonna glorify that. And the homie, Wicked, he went over there and he stabbed the brother. He, for those that know Wicked from Fontana, he was tall, moreno. Again, he was a bad artist, right? And he went and whacked him. The brother, he was how they are in the Pintas in Mexico, right? Again, they're all supposed to be in federal, but since they have the plaza, they come to stay because they have more freedom, right? They have a bunch of Talibanes around them, always 24/7, as long as they're out from that cell, right? So when the homie hit him, of course, he had a whole bunch of people jump on him. So basically, you get one, two, maybe three or four at the best, and you gotta make them count. Bend there, and but we never really sat down and thought about the money he was bringing them, right? The who. I don't know what he pushed, but I know Blast pushed. Now, next thing you know, if what me and the homie from Compton, right, ended up doing to Puerca, yeah, we got what we got, but it was nothing. Basically, the homie, was messed up. We're straight cowards. We know what's right and wrong, and we seen the homie down there in Talacha for 3 days. I used to take strolls. For those that knew how Talacha looks, I used to walk through there and walk through the hotel and just peep. I wanted them to give a prize to get him out of Talacha, right? So I could move the camaradas to see if we could pull him out of Talacha. And I never came. and never came. And for those that been in the Pintas, you guys can imagine his treatment in Talacha, right? It wasn't just embarrassing. You could see what they were doing down there. They made it public. And at the same time, you had three Pilis telling us it's what we signed up for. He completed the mission, right? But answer me this, over what? Over their stupid habit? Their feria? We had a good thing going with the brother, honestly. And I honestly think if they wouldn't have opened the mouth, the brother would have came through and just hooked them up on the natch. But you know, they always gotta go that extent. After all, campoleros were meant to die on the line for them, right? For their habit, for their head. They never answer up. When was the last time you guys heard an actual Pili bucking up and handling business? You see, you hear the Pilis put you on the list and tell you, "Oh, I'm gonna whack you." It's more like the camaradas are gonna whack you, right? They're gonna go sacrifice their life for you just 'cause you said so. It always happens like that. And I do understand. I was that dummy, right? I was there. They told me, hey, see that fool? Blando, duro. Aviéntale la piñata con dulce duro, right? And I am questioning it. So I'm not minimizing them about just doing it, right? But when are the other actions gonna come into effect? For example, when Pili say, he's a sureño, he has no say so, we're M. They can't dictate nothing. They have to do what we say. Or I'll have his head taken, his career. He runs, I'll go after a brother. Well, that's what it used to be. I'll go after a brother. Now it's go after a family member, right? Because they can't. We gave him that power. That's the key word. We gave him that power. Well, I include myself, but campoleros, sureños, right? Anyways, to end this, I said it before, right? I was lucky in this pinta, because the homie Wick was one of them that after the third day, they took him out to the trash in the back. They made it a point to send myself, 5 other camaradas, and the 3 Pilis for being a dolphins that had the camarada's life taken, for us to go bag him up. And then, you know, I was one of them. I wasn't the main one, but I was one of them that said, hey, with all due respect, we gotta take off on them. We could hit all the targets. We know which are the main targets. We're gonna get taken out, but we can't allow this to happen. They're touching our people. We backed up the homie. And the Pili say, sit, boo, you're not gonna do nothing. And what did a coward like myself did? Did nothing. Put lokes on and kept strolling. Cause I was that. You guys call it what you want, right? I wasn't a man though. I wasn't a soldado. You know, everything you see now, the camaradas are being obligated to ain't a soldado. Call yourself a gangster. Analyze the situation. Don't take my word for it. Anyways, just a little continuation of my story. The main goal of the message is what I always say. Stay true to those that are true to you. Value your life. You see, you could go in, but if you pay attention, and not just in Mexico, everywhere, it's about their power, their dope, their feria. And when a camarada tries to speak up or say something, you ain't worthy. You ain't on their level. You can't speak on M's business, but they could go after your family and after yourself. So just stay true to yourself, be smart, and always stay loyal to family. I hope I made sense, everyone. God bless.